Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for those opening remarks and for highlighting the importance of the soft skills that humanities have to offer. At this time, I will invite Dr. Holger Dix to come and give his opening remarks on behalf of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Dr. Dix is the head of the regional program, Political Dialogue for
It's always good to be here because we always have wonderful people who will share their experience with us. And I already, when we met in the boardroom, I had the possibility to talk a little bit to them, and I can confirm that you will have a wonderful time today. That will be a wonderful time for you. SAIIA again has chosen very, very interesting people to talk to you today. And I'm very happy here, especially because we're doing that as SAIIA, and together with SAIIA. SAIIA is a partner of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. SAIIA is the number one African think tank on foreign affairs, and what is Konrad Foundation to be a partner of SAIIA. Now, what I wanted to tell you today is maybe something you will be interested because you're studying humanities. So the field, and I think Elizabeth mentioned it already, the field of humanities sometimes is associated with uncertainty, limited job opportunities, but I think that this view is too narrow. The humanities, like psychology, sociology, philosophy, education, and others, focus on people, on how we think, how we feel, and how we act. They foster critical thinking, empathy, communication skills, and a deep understanding of social dynamics. And these are competencies that are more and more in demand in this complex world, as has been mentioned in the paper announcing this event. Now, when you talk about career paths of students of humanities, we have to say that they are very diverse. We find people in education, we find them in social services, healthcare, counseling, in my job, advising politicians, in media, and in communications. And all these are professions where you do not just work, you make an impact for others and for the society. And that brings me to a very crucial point. It's the question, what makes us happy in our work? And when you read studies about that, what happiness creates in work, quite often people say it's not only the money you earn that makes you happy. It gives you a certain security, that's true. But what we learned about this question is it's more the meaning, the social connection, the ability to make a positive difference that most strongly influence our happiness at work. People are especially happy when they can help others. This seems to be part of the nature of the human being. They are happy when they can help others, when they feel needed, when they have the impression that their work matters. And that is exactly what many careers in the humanities offer. They allow us to work with people, to support, guide, and inspire them, and to grow ourselves in this process. Of course, there are some challenges. There's a strong competition. I see many students here. You will compete against each other once you've done your studies. Sometimes starting salaries are not exceptional, but that seems to be the case in other professions as well. But I'm convinced that with commitment, creativity, and willingness to keep learning, it is entirely possible to build stable and fulfilling careers as someone who has studies in humanities. And those who work with heart and mind will not only be professional, successful, but personally content. So I think let's broaden our perspective. The humanities are not a detour, they are a path to meaningful work, to human connection, and to the chance to make a difference in the life of others and in your own. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you today good conversations, information for the students, and hopefully many new ideas with regard to your professional life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dix, for that. I think my key takeaway from this is that careers in the humanities are a place where you do not just work, but you make an impact. And I think another important part to note is that careers in the humanities have the potential to create happiness because you get to create social connection. That being said, I would like to now move on to our keynote speaker. I have the privilege and honor of introducing Mr. Kuseni Dlamini, who is my boss's boss. Mr. Dlamini is SAIIA's deputy chair under the National Council. He serves in several boards across multiple sectors and is also the current president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Africa. Work and his experience to shape today's discussions. Mr. Dlamini, over to you. May you help me?
Thank you to my boss, KAS-SAIIA, and my other boss, Elizabeth, who is very smart enough to make me pretend that I'm the boss, but she's actually the boss, not me. And again, also thank you to the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, Dankeschön, Dr. Dix, for all the help and support and collaboration that SAIIA has enjoyed in this, not just in this program, but in many other areas. It's really crucial. Good evening, colleagues, friends, current and future leaders. But before I start, we just had some very countries I was heading here. We had that journalist Sydney Madia has sadly passed, and I would like to convey on behalf of SAIIA and the American Chamber of Commerce and all the other organizations that I chair and I'm associated with, our very deepest condolences to her family and loved ones. This is not just a loss to them, but a loss to 702, those of us that listen and thoroughly enjoy listening to her incisive analysis and coverage of our body politic. And also it's a loss to the media industry, the fourth estate in general, in South Africa, Africa, and dare I say elsewhere in the world, in honor of her, may I just ask that we rise and observe a brief moment of silence. Thank you very much. Thanks indeed. Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, friends, current and future leaders. It's an immense honor to join you all at this flagship careers event. Over the many years that I've been part of SAIIA, there are a few events that I enjoy coming to at Jan Smart's house. This is one of them, and the other one, Elizabeth, has always been our Model United Nations debate, when we get the schools from different parts of the country to come here and represent different countries and give their own exposition on foreign policy, geopolitics, and topical, global, regional, and local issues. So I'm thoroughly honored to be here with you this evening. And let me begin by thanking our host, the Institute, for convening such a timely and necessary conversation. We gather today under the theme of future-proofing humanities degrees, leadership and careers within a shifting global order. It is a theme, needless to say, that speaks not only to the academic and professional lives of students in this room, but also to the broader role of leadership in our societies. And so I want to start with a simple observation. Uncertainty has become the defining characteristic of the 21st century. Those in the business world, especially the management consultants, like to tell us that we live in a VUCA world, a world that is marked by volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity, and unpredictability. We live in a time when the assumptions of the past no longer hold true. The end of the Cold War ushered in an era where many believed the world had settled into a unipolar order led by the United States. Today, that assumption is being tested at every turn. The rise of China, the reaccession of Russia, the strengthening of the BRICS alliance, which is ever expanding, and the increasing assertiveness of the global South have all made multipolarity not just a possibility, but a reality of our time. The post-Second World War order is fraying. Contradictions are visible everywhere. And amid this unpredictability, the global South is playing a central role in shaping what comes next. For students and graduates of the humanities, this is both a challenge and an opportunity. The question, therefore, is not whether the global order will change. It already is. The question is, how will this new order influence careers, leadership, and the role of the humanities in the global South, and indeed elsewhere in the world? Just a brief reflection on my journey. Before diving into the global context, let me share a piece of my own journey. I was very fortunate to study at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar in the 1990s after my other undergraduate studies in nothing else but the humanities at UKZN. It was the early years of our democracy, a time of great optimism, but also deep uncertainty. The future had the potential to be positive, but it was still unwritten. For many of us, the question was, what would leadership look like in this new South Africa? And how would we contribute? To study at a prestigious institution like Oxford, I was fortunate to spend time alongside peers from across the world who had great levels of ambition and optimism for what the future held for them, regardless of the specific paths we each wanted to take, from politics to academia to leading prominent organizations in our history. We were united by the sense that we were entering a world where inherited certainties were no longer hard and fast rules. That experience of stepping into a world where the old order was fading and the new one had yet to be defined has never left me. It taught me that humanities are not a luxury. They are the training ground for leadership in moments of uncertainty. Much is made of the importance of commercial savvy and core business skills. However, even when we have an abundance of data, leaders still need to make decisions. Let's look at a few scenarios where leaders will need more than just the numbers to make a decision or decisions. Imagine your organization is navigating a reputational crisis. Numbers and data may be of value. However, a leader or a leadership team will also need to understand much more than that. You can have a whole host of technical experts in the room, but that does not guarantee success to solve a human problem. Next, think about leading teams that span across different countries and cultures. That becomes much less about spreadsheets, requiring leaders to draw on their empathy, cultural fluency, and the ability to frame meaning across differences. And then, of course, there is the inevitable moral dilemma that you're bound to face in a career. There is a term called the triple bottom line in the corporate space, which covers how top organizations aim to not prioritizing social issues and environmental and governance considerations, what is now one of the mega trends in business and the world until the occupants of the White House changed. Profits at all costs is not an acceptable mindset in responsible business. And I have found that there is a great deal of ethical grounding that the humanities field instills in its scholars. Now, let us return to the world around us. Three forces are reshaping our global context, and each one underscores the value of humanities' trained leaders. First, geopolitical realignment. We no longer live in a world dominated by one superpower. Multipolarity is the order of the day. The BRICS alliance, now expanded, offers its vision of the world. Africa is not peripheral to this. It is central. From the African Continental Free Trade Area to peacekeeping missions and climate negotiations, Africa's voice is growing. The late Kwame Nkrumah cautioned us, however, that Africa needs to look neither east nor west, but look forward. In the current context of geopolitical contestations, I'd like to suggest that is our future and our fortunes are neither tied with this or that part of the world, or whether there's a school of thought. We go the China route, go BRICS, forget the West. I would argue for an end-to-end approach to how we position ourselves in a multipolar world. In a multipolar world, colleagues and friends, we need smart foreign policy approaches that advance the national interest in general and the national economic interest in particular. Ultimately, foreign policy has to be an articulation of our domestic foreign policy priorities. If it cannot help us deal with the scourge of poverty, fight against the inequalities and the high levels of unemployment, if it cannot improve the welfare of our citizens, cannot make us to be globally competitive and world-class in industry and in everything that we do, we have to constantly go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves some very simple and profound questions. What's the raison d'etre? Secondly, digital governance and artificial intelligence. AI is not just a technical breakthrough, it is a political, ethical, and social revolution. Who sets the rules for AI? Whose values are encoded into the algorithms? These are not just questions for engineers, I'd like to suggest. They are questions of philosophy, law, communication, and ethics. They are our questions as humanities graduates. Thirdly, climate and energy transition. The climate crisis is no longer tomorrow's problem. It is already shaping our food systems, our water security, and our economic models. But it is also an opportunity. Africa is rich in critical minerals, renewable energy potential, and young human capital. The challenge is not only technological, it is about justice, equity, and how we shape narratives. Again, that's the domain of all of us, and that's an area of responsibility for all of us in this room. Together, these forces mean one thing. The leaders of tomorrow will not be those who know the most equations, but those who can interpret the equations, connect the linkages, and guide amidst uncertainty. Just from my own career experience, when I left university, I joined Anglo American. And Anglo American is a mining company, as all of you will know. If I can ask you, how many mining engineers have been CEOs of Anglo American that you know of? How many CAs that you know of that have been CEOs of Anglo American? What did most of the CEOs of that great company study? Most of them read the humanities. They read PPE at Oxford and then moved on to occupy those roles. So perish the thought that if you do humanities, you are confined in the NGO space in research or anywhere. You can literally work anywhere. The only job I had in humanities, actually closest, was just lecturing at this university in the Department of International Relations. All my jobs have been outside of that space, have been in the private sector, have been in conservation. I chaired Sun Parks, worked in various organizations locally and internationally. The humanities competitive advantage. Next, I would like to touch on the competitive advantage of the humanities. I'd like to highlight three of these. First is thinking and problem-solving capabilities, which is an invaluable skill for a leader, or dare I say any leader. This talks to the ability to sift through noise, to see patterns, and to anticipate second-order consequences in a world where we can be exposed to information overload. Who possess this skill will have a competitive edge. The second is narrative power. As scholars from within humanities, we are often the storytellers. Data on its own is not emotive. It will not move people. However, leaders who can use their analytical skills to inspire, mobilize, and build shared purpose are the leaders who others are more likely to want to follow. We have some of those leaders here in front of us. You'll hear from them when the panel starts taking place. The third is cross-cultural fluency. As Africa continues to integrate and as the global south rises, the ability to mediate between different worlds, whether linguistic, cultural, or political, becomes essential. These are not soft skills, colleagues and friends. They are hard skills, hardcore attributes. And they are what the humanities are trained at best. To paraphrase a comment from Simon Sinek, there is no such thing as soft skills. There are hard skills and human skills. Hard skills make us better at our jobs, but human skills make us leaders. Let me pause here and speak directly to students in the room. Some of you may feel you stand at a crossroads. Some of you may wonder whether your humanities degree is less useful than a STEM qualification, especially in a world seemingly obsessed with technology and the natural sciences. And you heard Dr. Dix here, Holger, saying, the pay may not be that good. It also depends what choices you make. I will differ with that, that the pay is based on the choices you make and the path that you elect to follow. And I would also argue and for everyone. So I think it's important. And you also had Elizabeth saying that STEM graduates should study humanities. Agree with you, Elizabeth, but I'd also like to argue that humanities graduates must venture into the field of science, mathematics, and technology. When I was at university, I made sure that I was friends not with humanities students, but I was friends with students that were doing disciplines that appeared eccentric and esoteric and away from my area. So spend time, go and sit in the mathematics lecture. No one will chase you away. The science lecture, even if they sound like they're speaking Greek, sit there. And, it really does stimulate the brain and it makes us to really enlarge our horizons. So it's really very, very important that we are deliberate and proactive in ensuring that we embrace multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, and interdisciplinarity, because that's how working and succeeding in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world will require going forward. Some of you may face multiple competing opportunities, a scholarship, a job, a new venture. Others may face moral quandaries. Do I take a higher paying role that misaligns with my values, or do I choose the path that matters more to me? These different options may each be attractive in their own way and may also carry a level of risk and uncertainty. There are three actions I would encourage you to take when feeling this way. First, pause and reflect. Instead of rushing into a decision, ask yourself if and how what you are considering aligns with your values. Secondly, seek wise counsel. There is great value in mentorship or even seeking input from those more experienced than you when you need it. Malcolm Gladwell said, no one, not rock stars, not professional athletes, not software billionaires, and not even geniuses ever makes it alone. So don't be shy of seeking counsel when you need it. Once you have reflected and sought wise to step up boldly, when you make decisions, do so with convictions. Enlarge and expand your scale of your ambitions and make peace with it, with the fact that you will vary the outcomes up front. This will prepare you for what leadership is about, making decisions amidst uncertainty. So my encouragement to you here is that uncertainty is not your enemy, it has to be your friend. It is your training ground. You've got to embrace it. The official framing of this event rightly emphasizes the Global South. Let me expand on why this is important. The African Continental Free Trade Area is creating the largest single market since the EU. This is a platform for careers that cross borders and industries. The rise of the BRICS alliance is not just a headline. It is a tangible shift in capital flows, governance norms, and the intellectual center of gravity globally. Africa's youth bulge is the largest in history, and it is the best competitive advantage any continent has got today. This is not a burden, it is an opportunity. If channeled through education, creativity, and leadership, Africa can transform itself into a first world continent in our lifetime. And it will take each one of you and all of you to turn Africa around into a first world continent, so that when you next land at Heathrow or JFK, they're not going to think of an immigrant running away from poverty and wars in Africa. They will think like they think when a Singaporean young person lands, or a Chinese young person, or Japanese, they think they're bringing tech investments, they're bringing their world-class skills, they're going to transform those economies. They want them in. We need to contest the global positioning and branding of Africans and Africa by being world-class in what we do, being the best in what we do, whether it's the humanities, it's science, it's research and development, it's in whatever space. We've got to be known for excellence. We need top thinkers who can shape public opinion. We are very inward-looking, good scholars in here whose work we don't see in mainstream publications globally, whether you talk to Wall Street, you talk to FT or everywhere, but you look at India, Indian scholars, you look at China, they're really great in contesting the hegemony of global ideas. So we need to use the endowment we have as humanities graduates to advance the strategic positioning of our own nation and our own continent. The green transition will succeed or fail depending on decisions taken here, not just in the major capitals of the world, but here on African soil. These are opportunities, but only if we have leaders capable of interpreting, negotiating, and inspiring. And that is the role of the humanities graduate of today and the future. How do we then future-proof the humanities? So how do you, as students and future leaders, prepare? Let me offer a few thoughts. Firstly, aim to become T-shaped in your skill sets. What do I mean by that? This involves having one area of deep expertise combined with a broader understanding of related areas. What universities teach us across disciplines, whether it's social sciences or the natural sciences, best universities teach students. There's nobody mining engineering or civil engineering and becoming a mining engineer the next day at a mine. They still have to go through some tutelage. There's nobody that leaves humanities and is a top researcher. They still have to learn. And again, that flexibility of mind and the desire to always learn new things is so important. Secondly, embrace AI literacy. You don't need to code, but you must understand AI strengths, risks, and policy implications. Leaders of the future will likely operate as translators between machines, policymakers, and citizens. Build a portfolio, not just a CV. That's my third point. Write, publish, volunteer, and create. I used to have a professor at UKZN who used to say, publish or perish. And that's how you are able to build your own professional brand and also influence discourse and shape thought leadership. Evidence of contribution will speak louder than a degree alone and will enable potential employers to connect the dots more easily about the impact you are capable of delivering. Fourthly, think global and local. Aim to position yourself at the intersection of Africa's transformation and global trends. That is where the opportunities are. And above all, I implore you to continuously foster a growth mindset and remain curious. You are going to hear from a very seasoned panel, and I encourage you and for all of us as speakers here are to encourage you to see your humanities degree not as a limitation, but as a mandate for you to go big and shape not just South Africa, but Africa and the world, and hope that the next Secretary General of the United Nations will come from this room. I have no doubt you all have what I can see from the faces here. I can see the next Secretary General of the United Nations, the next Director General of the WTO will take over from Ngozi Iweala. I see the next CEO of Microsoft and Coca-Cola and the next Vice Chancellor of VETS and UP. They're all here. I see you all. The next president of South Africa, the next spokesperson of DECO who will take over from Crispin. I see them here, Crispin. Watch out for your job. They're coming. They're ready. If you are looking for evidence, you are going to see a great deal of that today and the trajectory that is possible with the humanities. In conclusion, so as much as uncertainty may surround us, in the current context, one thing's remain very clear to me. The world needs interpreters. It needs people who can connect different social phenomena and different disciplines, people who can weigh ethics against expedience, people who can build narratives that inspire cooperation and collaboration. It needs leaders who can make meaning in a world full of noise, leaders who can help us cut through the clutter. That is the gift of a humanities education, and that is your responsibility as graduates and future leaders of not just the global South, but the world at large. So embrace uncertainty, hold fast to your values, build bridges across differences, and see your degree as a call to leadership, because the future will not only be shaped in Washington or Beijing, it will be shaped right here in Mzansi, where this year we are privileged to be hosting the G20. We'll be having the most powerful economies descending on our shores. The future will be shaped in Lagos, it will be shaped in Nairobi, it will be shaped in Luanda, in Delhi, and Sao Paulo. We need to engage with being drivers of change, not passive participants or spectators. The question is not whether you will have a role. The question is, will you seize that role and what will you do with it? I truly believe that you are destined for greatness. And I thank you all for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dlamini, for those insightful remarks. I think you've given us a lot to think about in terms of navigating as in the humanities in a changing world. At one point I thought was particularly important. We are living in an uncertain world, but we are fortunate because humanities is a training ground for leadership in times of uncertainty. And I think if there's anything to take away, it should be that. So we should see this time as an opportunity. In the interest of time, I will take two burning questions for Mr. Dlamini from the floor. So if you can kindly raise your hand if you have a question for our keynote speaker, and I'll kindly just request assistance with the mic.
Is there any question? If you don't have a question, I've got many questions for you, and I hope you will answer them. I can see someone wants to ask a question. Oh, yeah, there's one. Oh, there's one right here. Okay. She's
What would be your advice to those who don't really know how to start that process?
Yeah, my advice is that there is never a good time to start than now. And each and every day you have to ask yourself whether are you doing things that make you comfortable or uncomfortable. If you focus on the things that always make you comfortable, then you are not serious about life. You've got to force yourself into a zone of the discomfort and do the things you don't like doing. Do the things you may be shy of doing, you may not be used to doing, and go out there, connect with others, your peers, your professors, go to the business community and really challenge yourself. Do things that are unfamiliar to you and unusual to you, and that will really open new avenues of learning and inspiration. I knew there was going to be a question here. Go ahead, yeah.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Tato Mazumadibo. I am the co-founder and vice chairman of AMARI, African Minds of Applied Research Institute. We actually are a think tank ourselves. So we're a competitor in another think tank here. So I hope the CEO will allow us to be here. My question is, we actually just launched 2 weeks ago, and we host a lot of meetings with other think tanks, etc. But my question is, how do you tackle scaling when we are within the humanities industry, especially when rejection is a very tough thing to take? And when you're only 20 years old, 21, you walk into rooms with people who are fairly established, PhDs. I'm only in my second year, for heaven's sake. And I'm trying to make a think tank. Ageism is a reality when you enter these corridors. How do you tackle that ageism and actually coming into the room with all due seriousness when we're wanting to actually grow our own industries? Thank you. That's my question.
Tato, thank you very much. I can say on behalf of our CEO here that you're welcome to be here as we collaborate with all think tanks. The more, the merrier. It's not competition, it's collaboration and partnership. How do you tackle scaling? I think it's a very important question because it really speaks to our worldview and our approach to everything that we do, whether it's in the humanities and dare I say, even in the private sector. We have to think, if we want to have impact, that it has to be at scale and it has to be on a global scale. And we try and position ourselves in that fashion, because if you just think narrowly, then you're not going to maximize your impact. You have to think of the world which has got more than 8 billion people rather than the 66 million people. And I think, Tato, the way of tackling it is exactly what you're doing. You're grappling with the issue of scaling. Just think about it, debate, and just be intentional in looking at various ways of scaling up, and don't be deterred by age. In fact, being young is the best time to be young in the world. And also remember, most of the top companies, the FANGs on the New York Stock Exchange, were started by people that were actually much younger than you. So you're not young. I mean, when Bill Gates started Microsoft, we've got a colleague from Microsoft here. He was 19 years old in his dormitory at Harvard. When Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook, he was also a student, an undergraduate student at Harvard, below 20. So this is the time for you to lead. You are never young, and there's nobody who's young. Once you're 18, South Africa, you can vote and you can be voted for. You can run for president tomorrow. Nothing stops you. And you can are sent to Harvard and run any institution. Laurie Summers was the youngest professor, a tenured professor at Harvard in his 20s. So there's nothing like being young. You really have to stretch yourself and push yourself and be globally competitive and play the global game, not just the local game. You're not just competing against your peers here, you're competing against young people in Singapore, in Japan, in Germany, in France, in Canada, and be the best in what you do on a global scale, not just on a local scale. There is another hand over there.
Hi. Hello? Is it on? Okay. Hi, my name is Mantikana. I am currently a student here at WITS doing my master's in social and psychological research. I'm currently actually working on a project where we're trying to find out where honors students who did their honors in psychologies have gone on to like work and what their career paths have looked into. And this is obviously important work because the literature suggests that many of them have struggled to find work and then craft their own careers. And so one of my questions is, how do we then get, I don't think the responsibility solely is university in preparing the students for the job market. I do wonder, how do we engage the possible stakeholders to then say, this is your responsibility too, and how do you come to the party to then solve these problems that we have?
Manjikana, that's a great point you're raising. It really raises the issue of, how do you see yourself? If you've done an honors in psychology, are you just confining yourself to that? I'd like to argue, as I argued earlier, that universities teaches us to learn, to be perpetual students. So it's as part of building a portfolio of competencies and branding yourself, you should not confine yourself to what you've studied. I'd like to suggest that 60% of people out there in the real world are not working in the areas, in the fields where they studied. I'm a good example of that. When I'm with mining engineers, they think I'm a mining engineer. I ran Old Mutual as a CEO, working with actuarial scientists, thinking I'm an actuarial scientist. So you need to have that flexibility of mind and also position yourself for careers beyond what you've studied, unless, of course, you've got a personal interest to pursue and work and confine yourself to that. But the issue of unemployed graduates and graduates that are not getting jobs, it needs to be looked at in a broader context. We need to see how we can improve their employability and how we assist them in that. But don't confine yourself to what you've studied. That's my point. And employers are not always interested in the certificate. It's about how you present yourself. What's your value proposition? Do you have the flexibility of mind? Are you trainable? Are you a team player? Do you have those critical and problem-solving skills that I was talking about earlier on, especially now in the digitalizing economy in which we live? Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of your excellent questions and for your engagement, Mr. Dlamini. I'm really sorry, but in the interest of time, I would like us to proceed to our next item. Do feel free to maybe approach Mr. Dlamini, during networking when we end the program, but thank you so much. We will now move on to our panel discussion. I would like to invite over our current KAS-SAIIA scholars, Mr. Vashni Naidu and Mr. Muziwe Ndlovu, who will then take us through the panel, and they will introduce their panelists for us. Over to you, Devashni and Muzi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Muzi Ndlovu. I'm a research scholar here at SAIIA and also one of the KAS-SAIIA scholars.
Hi, my name is Devashni Naidu. That's the sound. I'm also another KAS-SAIIA scholar. I work in the Chief Executive's office this year.
I think I was supposed to say I work in the Economic Resilience and Inclusion Program, and that somehow slipped my mind. That aside, very grateful to have everyone here this evening. the conversation we're hoping to have is one that recognizes three things which are happening simultaneously. The first being evolving multilateralism, as we've spoken about, but secondly, the nature of humanities degrees and how they've become interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary, and finally, the future of work itself. So for some context, I'm not going to go through a full history lesson, but essentially what's happened is since 1648, the world order as we know it, Elizabeth's looking at me for starting from 1648, but the world order as we know it has essentially changed, and state systems have become a very huge part of how we think of the world. And at one stage, we had a hegemon of the UK, we jump, and we had a hegemon of the US. And the point is, there's been a contestation of what the world order ought to look like, and most of the scholarship that's there on the change in the evolution of multilateralism has focused on the last 20 years. And though that is definitely something which we'll take into consideration today, what's worth noting is that multilateralism itself has constantly been evolving and never been stagnant. And I think what we will try to do today is basically situate the conversation with the evolving of multilateralism right now, but within the broader context of multilateralism having constantly evolved, and ask two questions. The first one being, how do we position ourselves as humanities students? And the secondly, how do we then take into consideration the future of work within the consideration of not only artificial intelligence, but also the consideration of multilateralism evolving. And with that in mind, we have a distinguished panel which will answer more of these questions than Devashni and I will. And I'm not going to introduce them because they'll introduce themselves, but if they could kindly join us in front and we will get started.
We needed to fit you in one frame for the video, so it's as Mr. Dlamini said, it's about partnership and collaboration. That's how we have to frame it. All right, so as my colleague Muzi introduced to us, Muzi and I both gave our illustrious panel a task in introducing themselves. And part of this is because we wanted a really practicable lesson to come out of this. Something we're all familiar with, of course, is that very sort of anxious-driven introduction when you're meeting somebody new for the first time and you want to give your best face and your best foot forward, especially if I'm going to lean a lot into Mr. Dlamini's speech today. If they're a mentor that you're looking, or someone who has more experience than you, who you're looking to make a connection with. So we're going to do a blitz fire round. Our panel is going to give us their best elevator pitch of who they are. And once they have, I'm going to ask that you spend just a sentence or two talking us through why you chose to frame your career the way you have. And I think that's going to give us a real application exercise of how we might do so ourselves in the future. Along with that, we have the question for you: what role has your humanities background played in shaping the way you see the world? Humanities we use here loosely, because we understand if you have law degrees or social science degrees. So,
campaign. You can look it up. There were some interesting things that happened. And when I lost, I did stay for 2 more years, in part not to be considered a sore loser, but my heart was already thinking that there was more that I could do, and I didn't have to be confined to a political party to have that power. And so I went off and started groundwork. And my mission right now is to make sure that people actually understand how the state works and where their power is. And if you're a humanities student here and you're worried about where careers can go, I would say the 2 things I would leave with, the elevator pitch, is get used to talking to people, every single person. And then the other thing is you're going to go nowhere. And this is not just humanities if you don't actually understand the politics of your state. And I'll get to that a bit later, because I think for me, before AI and all these other things that people are concerned about, we have a country that is deeply unaware of how their state works. And I think it continues to leave us powerless. And I think the people in this room are the people that should be leading that particular power, because it won't matter whether you think there's a future proofing of humanities if we don't have a country.
Thank you. Well, that's a very tough follow from the 2, actually 3 esteemed panelists. Good evening, everyone. My name is Helen Mabore Mugashwa. I come from Matsilapata in Ramamabolo, which is about 1 kilometer away from Moria, Sioni, if you want to have a bit of a landmark. So we walk into Moria, which is quite fun because they have the best fed cooks in the entire country. You can research that, it's a fact. I'm in my critical 30s, and I serve currently as the lead for corporate and government affairs for Microsoft Southern Africa. I'm also the MD of Helen Advisory, which is an advisory firm that I developed about 3 years ago to deal with some of the questions that we are talking about today, about just lending a hand to getting our country to a level where it should be going, and we can discuss that a little bit later on. So I'm a humanities student at heart. I actually studied industrial psychology and industrial sociology as my undergrad, called BCom Behavioral Sciences. I know it sounds so fancy. I studied at Northwest University, which is, you know, not in your top 3s and whatnot, but a great university. And of course, I always thought I would go into something like psychology or into your HR, your labor relations. I applied to the Department of Trade and Industry for an internship and was very shocked to be shortlisted in the Policy and Legislation Chief Directorate, and also get the job. And of course, I felt like a fish out of water. I felt like I don't belong here. What am I doing here? Why did you pick me? And I remember my director at the time, Ms. Mphomu Singh, saying to me, Helen, your degree served the purpose of training your mind to operate in a certain way. What you do with that is absolutely up to you. You've got this internship, make the best of it. I can now say after 15 years that I am a public policy expert. That is the career that found me, and I fell in love with it, and I ran with it. I have since done my honors here at Wits, so I am an alumni. I did development theory and policy here, and I am currently doing my LLB with UNISA. I'm a 3rd-year student, so when the day ends for Microsoft, I switch over to law school, which is hard, but it goes to what our esteemed chair was saying about lifelong learning. It's you should never stop learning. Continuous learning is the way of life. But yes, I consider myself to be very good with people. I consider that to be my superpower. And that comes from that training of humanities. So yes, do talk to everyone, but most importantly, be the person that people want to talk to. Be open, be sociable, be down to earth, be approachable, be the person that people want to tell everything. Because in my world, where I am essentially a lobbyist for the biggest tech company in the world, that means everything. I'll leave it here for now. Thank you.
Wow, so yeah, a lot of interesting things have been said, and maybe let me start off by saying something controversial to up the ante. I've seldomly met anyone interesting who is actually working in something they've studied. You think Mandela, he spent half life in prison, but he studied a degree, never really practiced the law. I'm sure he wished he could have, but that's not the South Africa that we lived in. My elevator pitch is, first maybe Crispin Piri, I'm the spokesperson of the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. My elevator pitch is, I approach the world through a multidisciplinary lens, and I see myself as a problem solver. I studied law, and I do actually wish I had an opportunity to study humanities as well, because I think humanities, in essence, asks the question, what is the problem and how do we solve it? And there you learn there are many different lenses to what we regard as a problem and how we go about doing that. But I think the most constant in society is politics, and that's where I find myself. I regard myself as a political animal. And like almost everyone on this panel has said, when we understand the politics of society, we get to understand how society is structured. We get to understand who has the power, how they got it. And then we begin to ask critical questions about how we can move society forward. And we then realize that there are different spheres of power. So there's a technology company that we all have to use because they're a monopoly. And that segues into my first job that I ever got, was competition law. So if you woke me up in the middle of the night and you said, what do you really want to do every single day of your life? It's competition law. I really love competition law. But I found myself more in politics, and I really also love the space of problem solving, almost at a geopolitical level, if you like. And there you really see how various professions coalesce, various industries coalesce into what we now call the global community. And there are various very interesting dynamics to this. As a side hustle, I'm studying a postgraduate diploma in management and security studies at the School of Governance at WITS. Thank you very much. It's a side hustle.
Thank you to all our panelists. We'll just do a quick round of follow-ups based off the elevator pitches for all the panelists. I'll start right in the middle, and Devashni will continue. So I think I wanted to start with Mbali in terms of, there was a big conversation on being conversable as a person and being able to talk to people. And I just want to find out how, especially in a changing world where we all seem to exist on extremes with all our beliefs, in terms of I stand on this and you stand on that, how we bridge that gap and how we talk to people we think don't necessarily share the same beliefs as us, more so in making the world better, and how you've gone through that in your career.
Yeah, it is okay. So I think the very simple thing for me about the very simple thing for me about that is I don't think you should approach people thinking that you're going to try and change their mind or that they must just see your worldview. I think the important thing is to approach it because you're interested in how they've come to what they think and how they believe things should be shaped. Because then you can find that there could be some mutual respect on things that you can agree on and that you can work with. And for me, this was always evident, particularly in politics. I had very strong relationships with all opposition leaders, and it's why I think at the time I was probably the most successful opposition leader to get bills at least debated, because I think a lot of the people from the ANC, the IFP, the NFP had great respect for how I approached them. And it wasn't about trying to just score political points. It was about, we have a job to do and how can we do it? And I think that that's is sorely missing right now in the world, because everyone is so determined to have their worldviews as the ones that are seen to be correct. And I think you only have to look at, the United States to see how that has disintegrated to not even having strong conversations about what could be better for people, whether it's gun control or basic healthcare, and has become all about these culture wars because everyone wants to try and one up someone on, things that should be personal preferences that don't require me to agree or disagree with you, but just to understand where you come from. So I know it sounds very simple, but I think it's the most powerful way to approach that kind of thing. And then people become open to you, and sometimes they'll give you money.
Thank you. Hello? It is working? Can you hear me at the back? Okay, great. Sorry. That's just me then. Thank you, Buddy, for that. That's not working. Oh, you see how this is what happens when you trust your boss.
No, I'm well led. I'm well led, actually. Thank you for that. So thank you, Bali, for that. If I can start maybe with the follow-up back with Stefan, I think two things that I want to sort of follow up with you on. One is that, so for those who don't know, Stefan did a BCom and then an LLB. And of course, as he highlighted, he then went on to found Genesis and after doing your BCom thing does, but of course, that's not a part that's easily taken. And I wonder if you might just delve on that journey for you, right? Many humanities students have the transferable skills to become entrepreneurs or to become founders of think tanks, as we had a young gentleman state earlier. The second kind of question is, as you highlighted in your elevator pitch, impact is important to you. How have you reconciled impact in your career and specifically in your journey with Genesis? I think the statistics are, you've worked in many or most of the countries in Africa and many outside of Africa. You also stated you pride yourself on being headquartered in the country. What rather does impact look like for a firm or an entrepreneurship or a startup based in Africa, engaging with other African countries, and one that's also based in Africa that deals with countries outside of Africa? So many questions there. Please answer as you can.
Let me just say my actually, and this sure, should I start a think tank or start a business? And the reason why I didn't start a think tank, I'm afraid to say, is because I didn't want to ask people for money. And it was a homie. I was brought up very conservatively that you shouldn't ask people for anything, let alone money. But I then learned that when you start a business, then you've got to sell your skills, which is even worse, really. I think you've got to, if you want to start a business, figure out where can I deliver value that people are prepared to pay me for. That's that little link, which is really crucial. And whether it's Helen's megalopolis business or my tiny business, that's the heart of the matter. Then I just want to say something about your next 10 questions that you posed, Devashni.
Very normal.
It's about the business that we do in Africa and internationally, because I think it's interesting, and it's interesting also for where Crispin is coming from in this conversation. Genesis is really a development business. It's a development consultancy. So the world of development came to an end in the beginning of this year with the closing down of US aid and effectively the abolition of bilateral aid. It's really extraordinary. It just kind of went like this. $2 trillion was spent since 1990 on bilateral aid. It's now going to go to not a lot. For that $2 trillion, the successes were mixed because it was a philosophy and approach of outside in. We decide in Washington, Brussels, Berlin, London, what will be good to do. And then we come to countries and say, would you like some money for this? Would you want to do this with us? What's happened now is that has flipped. The only type of development
that will work now, and maybe the only type of development that's ever worked, is inside out. You start in the country. What does the country want? What does the government want? What do the people want? And you gather in resources, to Kuseni's point, intellect, ideas, capital from around the world. So that's the flip. So that's what we try and do as Genesis. That's our philosophy. And that means that we've got to work very closely with people in every country in which we work, or have people in every country in which we work.
It's me? Okay, there we go. Thank you. And I think I would love to continue follow-ups, but there's sometimes it'll be a bit abrupt as we try to cover everybody. My follow-up from Stay, I think, is picking up on something that Crispin said, which is the idea that a humanities student might wear many hats. And I think you kind of canvassed your career that's, it's not only broad in vertical sort of spectrum, but also in horizontal, right? And so I wonder if you might talk to us about the art of the pivot, if you will.
Yeah, well, please, I much prefer the art of the pivot right now than the art of the deal. You know, Bali was saying in her response about the importance of being interested in the world, or being, and I really think it's really important to just be interested in the world and what's happening, and to try as much as possible to understand the dynamics of the world that impact you. Somebody had asked earlier after the keynote, you know, whose responsibility is it? Listen, I'm so fascinated in your research. I'm going to like corner you outside about whose responsibility is it to get students career ready. And I think that there's a lot that we're not doing proactively as institutions to create the space for students with that. But what I want to say to all of you as students is that if you leave Wits University or wherever it is that you're at university with only your degree, even if you've got that degree with an 80% average, you will have failed. Because you will never be anywhere else in the world the rest of your long life where there's nothing else but conversations about random things happening all around you. So being here, you should be going to every nighttime seminar, every social, whatever. Look, I'm a joiner by nature. I've never met a committee I didn't like. It's a big problem. But so don't do that. But get involved in things, because that's how you build skills. In your classroom, you're not going to build skills. I'm a very fun lecturer. I don't teach my students very many actual skills. I give them lots of information. And you build skills by getting involved in things. So the students who organized this event, who had to corral us like they were corralling cats. I mean, really, I'm really sorry for, you know, and needing to make sure that there's food, that these guys who are doing the tech stuff, that Elizabeth's here on time, that, you know, all of the things, that the lights are on. That's skills. And so the ability that comes from, one, being interested in the world, and then the opportunities find you and you meet the people where you get access to the opportunities. The second thing is do things. Get involved in stuff. That's how we met. And you just do things, and that's how you learn things. It's been really interesting. Now that I got a grown-up job, it's just wild, and I'm like responsible for people's salaries and pensions and stuff. Do not recommend. You know, I'm finding myself drawing on skills, and I'm thinking, why do I know how to do this? Because when I was an academic, I mean, I wasn't needing to draw up like big budgets and things. It's because I was a debating geek at Varsity and organized 2 big debating tournaments that I had to craft budgets for. and had to hustle to get information about how to do so. And so I guess my point is that you build a skill set, and that skill set then equips you to be in all sorts of rooms, to engage in all sorts of places, and to be seen by people that can offer you different opportunities.
I think that's right. I think Helen is also probably somebody who can speak to this question on and sort of navigating the art of the pit. Helen is very humble, but something she didn't say in her introduction is after working, foundationally at the Department of Trade and Industry for about 6 years, she then went on into the corporate space and has since worked at some of the biggest corporate companies in South Africa. She's worked at British American Tobacco, she's worked at NASPA's, she's worked at AB InBev, and now at Microsoft, right? All names that we well know or recognize rather in this room. And I think building on Ste's contribution on skill set, I wonder if you might talk to us about, and it's something Mr. Dlamini mentioned, right? This T-set. It's how do you maintain and build upskill, transferring skills as you move through careers or through job sets, while balancing, expanding your expertise base, if you will, which I think is always a balance.
Thank you for that. I think I really like what Ste said about being interested and just showing up at stuff, right? And I'll tell you a little bit about how I pivoted from government to corporate. I saw that when you're a public servant, you get typecast, and it's very hard for people in corporate to take you seriously. So I came up with this grand plan where I was going to go work for organized labor. So I went to go work for the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And what that allowed me to do is to have access to all corporates and for them to have first-hand experience of who Helen is. And when the right opportunity came, they came to me to offer me a job. This was British American Tobacco. So what I have found to be the key is your personal branding. What are you known for? What are people experiencing every time that they work with you? When you're not in the room, what are people saying about you? How do they describe you, right? And if you show up as a hard worker, as someone who's enthusiastic, as someone who is positive, as someone who's always willing to roll up their sleeves, people are noticing that, and people want to work with people that are not afraid of hard work, right? I've never been one to do the bare minimum. I've never been one to do 8 to 5. It may be toxic to today's generation, or be something that's not on brand, but it's what has helped me to get where I am today. People call on me to resolve problems because they know Helen can solve things. Right? So what do people know you for? And what that has also helped with is, since I got headhunted out of the chamber, all the other jobs that I got, except for this current one, which is quite interesting, I was approached for those roles. It's because people see me being active, whether it's in a subcommittee of BUSA, or it's in a MCHAM conversation, whether it's in media, handling some sensitive topics around corporates. For example, one of the most stressful times of my career was representing AB InBev, South African breweries, during COVID, where alcohol was shut down. We couldn't even move stock from factory to storage, which meant we had to actually let go of millions of liters of beer. Being able to manage that kind of crisis is not something that I studied or anything. And even if you study it in a classroom, living it is an entirely different experience. But you just throw yourself into it, and you would be shocked at how much you actually know and what you're capable of and how you can manage things. So please really work on your personal brand, really work on what you want to be known for, and just don't be afraid of hard work. Don't do the bare minimum that's needed. Go over and above of what is needed, and the universe will respond. Thank you.
I think that's a great segue then to my final follow-up to Crispin to kind of close this first round of introductory remarks and navigating our panelists' careers. I think Crispin can probably speak to much of what has already been spoken of, the art of the pivot, skill set based. But I think one thing in particular that stands out to me is between your public service work and your civil society work, right? So the Competition Commission you mentioned, but I also see on your LinkedIn, I did my research, that you were a research intern at the National Union of Mine Workers, right? That must be a throwback, I'm sure. But also you were parliamentary liaison officer at Department of Communications and Technology, and then Minister for Justice and Correctional Services, and then obviously now the Minister of DIRCO. All of these jobs, I think, have in common being in a very dynamic workspace, being a very reactionary job. And I wonder if you might speak to what is a kind of job where you have to be on the edge of, the edge of your pants all the time, the seat, or the edge of your seat rather, flying off the, and how does one prepare for that? How does one build a skill set for that? Is it just experiential? Is there soft skills that one can build towards becoming as high profile as a spokesperson for a minister?
Sure. So the National Union of Mines internship is actually very interesting. It was in the parliamentary office, and how I got that was I was running to be SRC president, and we needed posters, and we didn't have money for posters. So we went to NUM. Someone said, speak to COSATU. COSATU eventually said, speak to NUM. They're very accommodative. And I worked with the parliamentary office there. And there were many debates around the time around nationalization of mines. And I volunteered to actually write a paper. And I knew nothing about mining.
Publish or perish, right?
I just thought I have ideas around why we should maybe nationalize mines or how we should go about this. I must say I can't remember the paper now, but I probably have it somewhere and I must revisit it. And I submitted that as a paper to the NUM office in Parliament, which of course was also engaging with a lot of parliamentary work at the time. And that's essentially how I got that. And I interned there whilst doing most of my varsity, completing my final year in varsity. Yeah, and I think that's really it. It's really what everyone has been saying, that show up, be interested in conversations, in certain things. But ultimately, the best way to prepare yourself is also what Helen has been saying. Take yourself seriously, actually. That's the first brand that you could have. Show up, take yourself seriously, and dedicate yourself to what you do. It then means that you don't view your work necessarily through an 8 to 5 lens. You view your work through, how can we resolve this problem? And then in the life of communications, I think every other day there's a fire to put out. So the constant question is, okay, where did this come from? How is there a miscommunication somewhere? Is there a misunderstanding? Or is there a concession to make? And you're constantly looking at something from, what is the origins of this? Why is it the way it is? How do we redirect it? Or how do we ensure that we put the correct facts out? And all of that requires you to be engaged, to constantly look at the world through various dimensions, and also to know people like this. I know almost everyone on this panel. I've worked with Genesis, but not Stephen, but in competition work, you work with economists. Generally in life, you'll work with a diverse pool of people. And that's also a skill that you learn by joining the debating society, because there you'll meet Ryan, who's actually an actual scientist, and you're a student rather, and you'll meet Elizabeth, who's studying anthropology. And through those engagements, you then start learning, wow, so there's so many different fields in the world, there's so many various aspects of approaching the world. And that way you become a more rounded person. So I think also, like Stay was saying, don't limit yourself to the classroom. In the classroom, you don't learn how to write minutes. Guarantee you, when your first job, you may be required. You'll be the person designated to write minutes, and you need to know how to do it. And you learn that by being the secretary of the debate society, because you have to keep minutes. You have to ensure that there's a file in place where this meeting was held on such and such a day. And you then realize that that is how society works. You want to be held accountable. How do we hold you accountable? On such and such a day, this is what we agreed to do. what are the live stream people saying? Have they confirmed that they're attending? That is done through meetings. You don't learn that by pitching up at the classroom at 10 o'clock and leaving 40 minutes later. And so all of these, living fully in varsity really equips you for that, but just generally living fully also in society, because what you learn in STAIR's classroom, you then realize in reality is completely different. Society is structured very differently. Now there are power dynamics. That's where politics really plays itself out. It's the uncle with the big purse who really decides what to do in the family household. And that's where you then start thinking, okay, this is a completely different dynamic that plays itself out so many other times in different ways in society more broadly.
Before we proceed to the next round of questions, we are going to have to go on a slight ad break. If there's anyone whose car is a VW Polo, GGW865 GG, could you please kindly assist people outside by slightly changing your parking? Thank you. Now on to the second part of the questions. We will move straight into, so the first part of the questions essentially try to sketch out people's careers and how humanities shape them. I think the second part of the questions, Devashni and I will try sort of figure out the turning points within people's careers and how the humanities then influence those. I think we'll start from back to front, and it's going to be a similar question for everyone in the panel, and it's on what were the turning points or challenges that shaped your career path, and how did you navigate uncertainty? We can start with where we ended, Crispin, in terms of what was the turning point in your career or challenge that you faced, and how did you navigate that experience?
Wow. I think there have been several turning points. I mean, having moved from the Competition Commission into the parliamentary space is also a turning point in itself. And that speaks to one having the wherewithal to adapt to a new space as quickly as you can. But also the best way to adapt is to be willing to learn from people who are there. And I think the one mistake we must never make is just because we have the degree and we've put in the hours, it doesn't mean we know it all. And so that willingness to constantly learn and be guided by people who have been in the room, who have been in the space, makes you adapt a lot quicker. Yeah, I think that's what I say. Challenges come in various ways. Sometimes on the personal front, sometimes in the workspace with various colleagues. I think the commitment to what you want to achieve will always help you overcome a challenge in one way or another, be it personal or be it in the workplace. And I think that's something that I would want to share with colleagues in the room, is to say, if you're really committed to what your goal is, the challenges will come in various forms, but it's that commitment that really drives you over the line. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I've had two turning points. Well, I've had many, but I'll only highlight these two. And I think the first one I've already touched on, which was my exit from public service. That was because I actually reached my ceiling in government. And I was so pleased to have a Deputy Director General, Garth Strachen, God bless him, who sat me down and told me that I've reached my ceiling. I was a Deputy Director in the Industrial Development Division, looking to get a director position, and I was, 26, 27? And that's unheard of, right? There were so many people lining up for that role, et cetera, et cetera. And he sat me down and he said, listen, Helen, you're very ambitious. You've got a lot of energy. It was hard, but I'll forever be thankful that he gave me that advice and that I took it and it worked out. The second turning point was actually 2 years ago, when I got retrenched from Naspers. And this is what happens in corporate colleagues. reorgs happen, reprioritization happens, and people get let go. Even really good people get let go because for whatever reasons, they might decide that, oh, your department is not our priority right now. We need to invest in certain other parts of the business or to, realize our shareholder value. And this was the first time in my career where I felt rejection. I had always kind of let my hard work speak for itself. I had smooth sailing. I had always kind of gotten every role that I wanted. And for the first time in my entire career, I felt rejected, but I also then was home for about 3 to 4 months. I did not know what to do with myself. As a busy bee, it was the most uncomfortable time of my career. But it did many things. It helped me start Helen Advisory and think about what that would mean, what role I'd play in our national conversations. It also helped me to connect with my kids because in these roles, we get so consumed that even just dropping your kids at at school in the morning is a tall ask, and you end up having someone do that for you. So for the first time in a very long time, I was able to just connect with my kids, be at games, do everything with them, and rest. And I also realized that it was the first time in about 14 years that I had never taken more than 2 weeks off of work, which is crazy, if you ask me. So I got to rest, I got to reset, and I got to think about what I really want to do, and also to stop being a little bit passive about my work. Because when you're doing one thing for a while and you're good at it, you tend to relax because you're like, I've got this, I've been doing this for a while. And I think maybe I may have hit that bridge a little bit, but that time helped me to fall in love with public policy again and to be very intentional in my next role, which is the role that I'm in now. So yeah, I think those are the 2 examples. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple, but I'll be quick about it. So when I left university, I got offers from Unilever, Investec, and Edcon, but I already knew by then that I really wanted to go into politics. I wasn't quite clear what the path would be or what the road would be, and I said to my mom, look, I need some time to think and figure it out. And she was like, all right, girl, but what you're going to do is you're going to be the taxi rank manager for the family business. And so for 2 years, I was the taxi rank manager at the Victoria market, which if you know KZN or Durban very well, is incredibly busy, hundreds of thousands of people every day. And I really loved it. And it was one of those things where, again, just connecting with people from different walks of life, going through the Muti market, eating amakuinya a lot, were things that made me fully determined that this is what I wanted to do. I liked being on the ground. And I'm probably the only person here that hasn't had corporate experience. And that's not because people haven't approached me. It's because for a long time, that just really hasn't aligned with what I wanted to do. So the first pivot was even past here, not going into what would be considered a stable job, but taking a chance that I would figure out for myself. And of course, I will say I had the luxury of a parent that was willing to support me. She didn't make me work, but that was also incredible. And then I told you about all the youth leader counselor stuff. And then the next pivot is I'd been an MPL and a counselor for a while, but I was getting frustrated with the way that my party was doing things because I just felt it was out of touch in some ways. And so I did something that no one else has done in the organization, and I left being a public representative, and I said, I'll go work on the staffing side and run the campaign for the whole of KZN. And then in that particular election, we not only gained more seats, but we were also one of the only provinces that didn't go backwards for the DA at the time. And I didn't have like, too much experience in doing, spreadsheets and stuff, but I was like, I'm not stupid, I'll figure it out in the way. But most importantly, I already had plans and ideas of what I wanted to do. So that pivot then shaped people into understanding that I was good as a politician, but I could also do the staffing thing. And then the next one was running for the leadership of the DA and just feeling that my time was up being there. And I went to a meeting, I'll never forget, where we spent, and this is a committee meeting, we spent something like 4 hours discussing something, all of us, different parties. And some of them were sort of nodding off. And so at the end, it was just me and 2 other members talking to the officials. And then it came time to do the vote. And when it came time to do the votes, then people were nudging each other awake, and then people would figure out, oh, so how are we voting? How are we voting? And then everyone voted completely the opposite of what we had all been discussing for the last 6 hours. And I honestly felt homicidal. And I was like, I can't continue this because I'm gonna start becoming a very politics and I do what I do. I will say though that I am feeling, not that I'm restless, but when I look at our country, I'm also just a little bit enraged at the things that are happening. And I'm feeling that there needs to be a pivot to be more aligned with me doing even more work in that. What that'll look like, I'll figure it out. But those have been my turning points. It's always been about making sure that I feel aligned with what I do, even if sometimes it doesn't make sense in terms of taking salary drops or doing something where you're not getting very much money at all. But as long as I've known that it feels right for me, then that's good. And just a quick one on that. Lots of people in humanities romanticize that you need to go into careers, particularly in civil society, where you romanticize that it's, you know, altruism, doing good. So you shouldn't be paid a lot. Don't take that. Be paid your worth, and also make sure that you know that all the other humanities students that are going to be coming up after you will also be paid their worth. Because a lot of you are being paid to think, and you need to be able to do that without worrying about revenue, transport money. So don't buy into this culture that I think we have in our society for people in the humanities, going particularly into NGO, civil society spaces, that they must do it just for good, as if they don't have their own needs to take care of.
I can see the camera thing.
And I just want to say and you know Elizabeth, now wondering in my current role, is this a sensible thing to say? But I'm going to say it because it's something really, something that you don't realize. Is it outside of, so like accounting law to some degree, those kinds of professions where you come in low, but once you've qualified, your salary increase is exponential, right? And so and I still think when I look at candidate attorneys are paid like small firms, it's unjustifiable in a country like ours. But the idea is that, you know, it's worth sacrificing that time waiting.
I get that.
A lot of
I don't know what's wrong with it.
internships.
It just went off. Let me just switch on.
Whatever it is, intern, with the understanding that once you're like formal in the system, then you'll be paid more. But that first formal job that you get to know, and this what's helpful about being friendly and speaking to people, get to know what the ceiling is for because all jobs have salary ranges. You have to know what the salary range is for that junior role. And make sure you're at the upper end of that salary range. Because something that I wish I'd understood more fully when I first started working is how much your first salary can often set what your ceiling is going forward. Because every subsequent job asks for your pay slip, even though they shouldn't, and there's a lobby. I don't know a bill to try and get rid of that. But that's just how it works. And so you set yourself on a value that may not represent who you actually are and what your worth actually is. And there's ways to escape that from being a trap once you're in it, but it is helpful to be aware of it from the beginning, because it then means that you take your own negotiating more seriously. Having said that, when you are fresh out of university, you've got no negotiating position. And I say this with love. You know nothing, John Snow. You know nothing when you leave. two big turning points in my life and in my career were my first non-university job at IDASA in Cape Town. I was in their parliamentary office, which is a think tank that doesn't exist anymore, and the most pivotal formative experience. And they, through a number of factors and that affected lots of organizations, ran out of money. And the first office to close was the Cape Town one. And at the time, my dad was sick with cancer, so I knew I was looking for a job desperately to move back home to Joburg, but also facing a retrenchment process at work. And through some miracle, the Planning Commission was in desperate need of junior researchers to help with research they were doing on the NDP at the time. This was now 2011. And the head researcher that was working on this, that was looking for people who'd worked on corruption, that had worked with Parliament, was a Rhodes Scholar. And so advertised it, it wasn't openly advertised it on the mailing list of Rhodes Scholars. My best varsity friend was at Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship at the time and shared it, was like, dude, aren't you looking for a job? I think you could do this. And I applied, and that's how I got the job. And in retrospect, underpaid, but it job. And I moved to Joburg, and I got to spend my dad's last 5 months with him. But it was such an important lesson in being able to pivot and go into the unknown. The second big turning point for me was in 2020. COVID teaching broke me. I taught first years, second years, masters, and I was supervising. I was a basket case by the end. And I was working with, I'd helped Lindiwe Mazibuko in her starting of what was then the Apolitical Academy, is now Future Elect. And she was like, look, I need a director of programs. And I tried to resign from the University of Pretoria. They said, you just need a break. So I took a break. And I spent 2 years working at Future Elect. And it was completely outside of my comfort zone in terms of some of the work that I had to do, but I wouldn't be doing this job if I hadn't done that job. And I'm very glad I listened to myself in needing to pivot. But then the third big pivot for me and big challenge was that I burnt out at the end of 2023 because I worked at a rate of knots. And my husband and I bought a house. And the first full month I spent in that house was, I left Future Elect in December of 2023. The first full calendar month I spent in that house that we'd moved into in June of 2023 was in February of 2024. Because I'd worked consistently for sort of I'm not good at dealing with burnout, clearly, as you can see. And so last year was the first time since I was 19 years old, no, I'm lying, since I was 17 years old, because I've been working since I was 17, that I didn't work for like 4 months. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Sure, do not recommend. But it was good for me because I rested. And having built up a whole portfolio of evidence of writing on multilateralism, I got an opportunity in August of last year to go speak at the United Nations Security Council, invited by the government of Sierra Leone, and to address the Security Council on UN Security Council reform because they'd read a paper I'd written 2 years before. And I wouldn't have been able to take that opportunity if I hadn't stopped the job I had the year before. And so trusting that looking after yourself will pay off, I think, is the big lesson of this stage of
I just want to say this is one of the best panels I've been on in my life. And I've been trying to figure out why is it. And I think why is it is these big lives, but people are saying personal things. I think that's why it's so unusual. And it's interesting that Sitya and Helen have both said, you know, we had this like break, this enforced break. I also had an enforced break before I started Genesis, actually. And I'm not really in the business of giving advice like all of you, but I'm going to try. I'm going to say, if you have an enforced break in your life because you can't get that job or because you are waiting for that scholarship or whatever, it's a valuable thing. It can recharge you, it can reconnect you, it can make you investigate new things. So that's like a love, that's a powerful gift that you've been given, even though it doesn't feel like that at the time. Second thing I want to make, just in response to Devashni's question, is I think my big turning points have all come because of crisis. Really because of crisis. So first 4 years, Genesis made no money, actually lost money. I only survived because my wife was keeping us going and so on and so forth. But that turned me from somebody with interesting ideas to somebody who could actually run a little business, because you have to be forced into that change. About 8 years ago, we had for 5 years, had a big Indian business that I started and ran, pride of my life, actually. It failed. And when it failed, we started going seriously into African countries. And the third crisis actually is right now, because of the end of aid and development and the coming of AI. But what do I know now, third time round? I know good things will come of it, right? Good things will come of it. So don't underestimate the power of crisis to shape a life.
I mean, the panel speaks for itself, right? I think we're hearing overtones of reframing, rejection, how important that is for your outlook, about how to navigate crisis, how to have resilience through that, how to take time. And so for, the generational divide, we did hear that work-life balance maybe is not something that we should prioritize, but they also speak of taking a break and taking pause. And so I think there is balance in that commentary as well. Could go on and on, I think, as Stefan said, right? Such big lives, so much to talk about. And I think I'll close this round by actually a quote that I believe Stefan says. It's something along the lines of interesting parts of life happen at the intersections, which is also Graham Skeet as well, right? Loosely, if you're a political IR student. So I think we're going to do a blitz round because we are unfortunately running out of time. The blitz round, it's one question, and you just have to give me sort of one sentence. The sentence must be about, 20-ish words long, so not a paragraph sentence, please. The blitz round is, in a world driven by technology and AI, where do humanities graduates have the strongest edge? So I think let's start this time with Helen, because she does in fact have some technology, public policy background, and then we'll go down to Stefan and then end with Crispin.
I think I will answer it by sharing what is happening currently at Microsoft. We have just gone through a transition, and we have developed and I'm aware that I'm running out of words in this sentence, a brand new team called Microsoft Global Affairs, run by a very senior president of this team, where we now fall under as government affairs. This team has been put together to respond to the current world that we find ourselves in. And that should tell you everything that you need to know. We are at the forefront of AI, but we are putting emphasis in global affairs. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I think all throughout humanity, there's always been things and areas where people thought the humanities wouldn't be as relevant, or jobs in certain industries wouldn't be as relevant, whether it was the typewriter or computers or the internet and the way that it's done. But the most important thing is that none of those have been able to replace the human connection. And machines can't always make the discernment between all the things we've spoken about this today: critical evaluation, analysis, understanding people, empathy. And so I think that AI is just rapidly happening, but I don't think it will ever replace the humanities in particular, because no matter what happens, humans are so complex with our flaws and everything. There's no way I think a machine is going to be able to replace people whose entire jobs and understanding is to see how best people should navigate. So AI presents us with another opportunity to redefine humanities, to say, we can be the ones that shape how AI should be actually embraced by the world, whether it's through public policies and the way we regulate it, or how we allow it to do things that will make it easier for us to do the kind of important work. So I don't feel scared about where AI and technology is going. I think the best people that are going to be able to make sure that it goes the way that it's best for everyone are the people in humanities, because thinking about these exact questions, philosophy is all about what are the big questions? How do we solve them? Maybe AI is going to help take us, to easier paths to that. So I'm very confident that the humanities will have a better space in this, because a big part of it is also that we are always adaptable.
I think in the place of current generative AI machine learning, the edge of humanities students is to understand what it is to be human and to be able to define that, to practice it. And so is to build a deep skill set. Stop getting ChatGPT to write your essays. You are actively de-skilling yourselves. I'm going to be working until I'm 90 if I want to, because I've got, I was in first year, 2003. So at this stage, I've got 22 years of reading, writing at a high level and needing to practice it. People who've got 3-4 years of that, you need to practice it, and you need to exercise your brain to practice that, because that skill is going to be the most valuable thing, because these machines have a limit in terms of, so the interpretation, the connecting, they're actually not very good at that. And so then the second thing is that with what's going to then evolve from where we are, because it is going to evolve and it's going to be a very different kind of AI and artificial intelligence, having African cultural intelligence is going to be really important, because the information, the knowledge set that these machines have been trained on so far are not reflective of the people in this room. And so being able to harness that is going to be really important, and that's your edge.
I think the humanities edges that you can apply kind of starting tomorrow, other than writing your own essays, which I just want to endorse as an important thing to do. Number one is use your deep understanding of actual contexts, i.e., where am I from, where am I working? Because AI is like a big machine for generating conventional wisdom from around everywhere. It's pretty bad at context, like pretty bad. So you should become the master of context. It helps to talk to everybody, right? That's the one kind of tip that you got. The second one is figure out ways to get people to change what they do. That's maybe the most important skill one can have in life, I think, going forward, because AI will never be able to do that. And I think the third one is be prepared to ask the uncomfortable, unpopular question. That critical thinking bit, I think, will be really important, again, because AI is a big machine for conventional wisdom.
Well, I think I want to pick up on that. So AI can't teach you critical thinking. And I think that's the starting point. But in a sentence, I would say the role of the humanities in the evolving society is to firstly understand that we create and modify technology. So it's us who create these tools. And we then have the ability to interpret, maybe direct, how humanity should evolve.
I think that does a great job at actually summarizing everybody's contributions today. And I think here we're hearing again echoes of what Stair and Bali said earlier about knowing your worth. I think we're also hearing echoes of what Crispin said earlier, which is in his job answering the big questions, right? Which may not and cannot really be answered by that context awareness, which is, I think, what Stefan is alluding to. So unfortunately, we have to close this panel. So Musi is going to give us some wonderful takeaways, and then I'll do the final thank yous.
Firstly, thank you to our panelists for joining us this evening. I think the big takeaway is I need to find out the best place that makes fat cooks in South Africa from Helen once we leave here. But substantively speaking, I do think there are three things that came through from the panel today, at least from my end. The first being that careers aren't stagnant, and just as the world is changing, so can your career, kind of thing. And I think that adaptability and that flexibility in how we think of our careers, more so in a changing world, was a very big takeaway for myself. I think the second was necessarily on the ability to build relationships and the ability to influence. I think Steve spoke about the idea of being a student who's interested in power, kind of thing. And Stefan just echoed that in terms of, if you have the ability to make people change their minds, you have the ability to move rooms and have your thoughts echoed, something which a humanities degree is training us in, then you're able to substantively have a good career. And the final thing that I think was necessary, which I took away, was on AI itself and the role we can play in not only using it properly, but telling our own stories and using it to basically further our own context, our own agendas, and our own perspectives as scholars within the Global South, and using that to make the world a better place, especially as it's changing. And I think those were my three takeaways.
Thank you. I think I would love to give you a closing sentence or a closing statement, but I would much rather actually take Q&As from the room. So if you'd give me that luxury, I'd ask the program director if we can have maybe 2 rounds of Q&A. Can we do 1 round and see how we're doing for time? Okay. All right. Can we please have hands from the audience? Wonderful. I recognize you. You put your hand up. Please, I think 2 things. 1, if possible, make sure that if you're going for a specific speaker that you identify them. And as a practice, I think if you can take away from the elevator pitch, give us your best elevator pitch in application real time.
Okay, my name is Lillian Lima. I am a first-year IR student at the University of Pretoria. I'm the chairperson of the University of Pretoria's International Students Association, and I'm very interested in strategic foresight and forecasting, and that's what I wish to pursue later on in my life. But my question is sort of towards the panel overall, but just commenting on something Dr. Sita said. You said that being African can be your biggest strength, and we shouldn't be afraid of our personal stories. But seeing as I'm chairperson of an international student association, I myself am an international student. And so through that, being African has sort of been my biggest weakness in this country, especially with regards to finding job opportunities, finding interests, internships. So it's sort of been a thing that I can't really work here or do anything much unless I go up to master's level, do policy analysis, and then get a critical skills visa. So I know none of the panelists are international or foreign nationals, but just as a Zambian native, trying to put my footing here in South Africa, because I've been here close to all my life. I love this country, and I really do want to make a difference here. But I attend these events. My field of interest, but I really, really want to do strategic foresight, but that won't get me my visa. That won't get me to certain rooms. So how would you recommend me or any other international students that might be in the room, that might be online, might be listening, how can we navigate this space as a way to actually find experiences so that when we do get our masters in like policy analysis, we do have that thing that sets us apart? And what are avenues I can explore so I can get that experience, find my footing, build my brand in these spaces as an international student, and not solely be limited to the critical skills visa, or marriage is also an option if I marry a South African man. But if we're thinking about like the professional routes, what could that look like? And I do offer that to Dr. Sita or any other panelists who could help with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's take, I think, a round of questions, and then we'll go to the panel. I'm going to take 3 more in this round. I see in the white shirt and the black blazer, I recognize you. Gentleman in the glasses, I acknowledge your hand, and then we'll come to person in the tie. Thank you. If we can get a mic down,
let me walk down.
Good evening, everyone. I am Demalangeni Lamini, a final year student at the University of Pretoria. I'm doing political science. I am also a content creator. So I always hear that we should always network, I always attend these networking events. But my question is that after networking with these people, how do we actually keep the conversations going? So I met someone who didn't even want me to give them their LinkedIn details, but they wanted to give me their WhatsApp number. So when we got on WhatsApp, I texted her, but she blue ticked me. So yes, so I want to find out, how do we keep the conversations going, and how do I relate to this person, and how do I make myself seen by her that shows of a job opportunity she thinks of me.
Thank you, Program Director. I'm embarrassed, I'm not a student. I'm Lula Mangone from Tembisa Serenade NPO, which is an organization that uses music for social inclusion, careers being one of them. I'm just touched by what you decided to address, starting from Mr. Lamini. I happened to arrive late. I could not even ask questions, but I heard everything that was said. But this was just put by your comments, all of you panelists. At school, in my other life, I taught. At school, students that are doing humanities are starting from grade 10, D, E, F, G. Already they know that they can't walk tall, because the students that are going to be taken seriously are those that are in 10 ABC. Already you, and even what is happening is that when there are opportunities in careers, you'll find that, okay, science students, let's go out. And humanities feel like they are not belonging. I was tempted when I was invited here to bring students. But when I looked at the type of questions that you put, I saw that I can't bring, because what I do, I go to schools. I've got a method that I use where I go and write students, they find who you are, and then so that they can pursue particular jobs. This is my bias. If everybody can study music education, you will find rounded leaders. You will find well-rounded leaders that will look like Mbali. The Ora Mbali, you know what you said, that's that thing that says, greet everybody. I'm challenging you students to say, when you go back home, attend those meetings so that you can be decision makers. But my last question, do you think that politicians will shape our lives? Really?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nota Ndonzama, founder and director at Nota Development Projects. There was a lot of conversations on the panel about the role of entrepreneurship. I know that's not what the panel was about, but for me, I'm part of the Alan Gray Fellowship, so entrepreneurship is a very big part of my life. In a lot of ways, I feel like entrepreneurship saved my life. But my question then becomes, in South Africa, obviously, we do have the issue of youth unemployment, and entrepreneurship has been proposed as a possible solution to that problem. I want to understand how us as maybe like future leaders, how are we supposed to approach honing and creating growth mindsets and equipping the youth with entrepreneurial skill sets? Because there was a mention of ensuring that you consistently have that growth mindset in terms of your employability and you being a worker, and also things such as like design thinking and all these different concepts that you learn in being an entrepreneur. How do you then pass those on? because you want to extend. We're not, I don't believe that we're necessarily in competition because everyone does need a job. So I do think that's, my question's more about sharing sort of entrepreneurial skill sets so people can have the ability to change their own narratives.
Thank you. I think perhaps what we can do is, if I can extend you even more than I already have, is in answering your questions, please make that your closing statement, because my program director has cracked the whip and unfortunately she said no more questions. I'm so sorry. So if we can please start with Stefan and then move down again to Mr. Perry. Thank you.
Maybe let me just say something in response to the last question about entrepreneurialism. Where you want to be an entrepreneur. So, you know, if I had my time over, I started a consulting business, I would have been much better. I would have saved 5 or 10 years if I'd actually just been humble enough to go and work for a consultancy. You know, I've learned a few useful things. So if you've chosen your trying to go fix if it's other thing that I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, at some point, just start it. Just start it. Don't learn about it. Don't talk about it anymore. Just start it, and that will be your best teacher.
Thanks. So to the question on being an African is the biggest weakness in South African, Crispin, there's things you must answer from your hat. I'm throwing the policy part of it to you. What I do want to say is that whether you are South African or Chinese, you're not going to get a first job in strategic foresight in South Africa in anywhere, nowhere in the world, because it's a skill set, right? And so you need to start as something. You need to work in something else. So whether it's, you know, getting Stefan to give you an internship there, doing economic advisory in different countries on the continent, or coming, you know, to me we don't do a lot of, we'll figure it out, right? Like where you go to whoever, and with internships, and you're at the University of Pretoria, the highest number of embassies after Washington, DC, that are constantly looking for interns and people to help with an event here and everything. So you should be, and I imagine you do, go to all of the events that get organized by my former colleagues who were here earlier. And excuse me, and the diplomats love meeting students because it gives them grassroots insights that you may find yourself in a WikiLeaks, but at least, you know, you know, so and you meet them and they don't, and with the big embassies, I know this for a fact because I've got former students that interned at embassies, they don't care when you're interning, because it doesn't fit into their, you know, the rules that they have to apply here. And that strategic, and that working in a place like an embassy that is needing to engage with people like Crispin is such a great practical lesson in that strategic thinking, planning, engagement. And so do that. And then last thing is, I do think that our conversation in South Africa is narrowed really unproductively in our anti-immigration, particularly African immigrants, and it's ridiculous actually, because there's a whole skill set that we're then not accessing and using. And what I will also say though is that these kinds of roles unfortunately require master's degrees. So with your degrees, your undergraduate degrees, if you do want to go into that kind of advisory role work, you need to be planning for what's the next step for honors, what's the next step for masters. Yeah. How to keep, I am a master blue ticker. There are people in this room that have blue ticked, including Muzi. Nosipo, I'm a terrible blue ticker. However, I am also a big putter honor, So if we've spoken and I know who you are, what you do, I put people forward for things that they don't realize, and I'm terrible at telling you that I've done it, but I do. But if you want to keep the conversation going, especially for people who are just like, there's only 24 hours in the day. And as I'm getting older, I need to sleep more. It's wild. Is solve someone's problem. So be like, hey, I see you guys, and Crispin's experience of NUM is exactly that. Say to somebody, listen, I know you guys are working on this. I'm working on this too. Can I help? And that's how you engage stupidly busy people in ongoing conversation. And yeah, that's where I'm going to end. And otherwise, guys, the world is hard. And the world is harder for you than it was for us. You are all going to be graduating into a much more difficult economy, into a much more difficult political environment. And we all recognize that. But also it's a contact sport. You need to be in it. And there's actually a lot of opportunity in crisis. And so, you know, you've got the opportunity to be real cowboys, not with American cultural imperialism. But yeah, so embrace that.
To my sister from Zambia, I forgot your name, I'm so sorry, but Lillian. Oh, okay, that's not jacked up. I mean, a lot of what's definitely applies. I'd also say, you know, call people like Crispin. Here's SAIIA right here. Maybe ask them like what opportunities they have. And I think sell it as an asset as well. You should be saying no one who wants to go in strategic foresight, who is also a Zambian national, has also been in South Africa and can give you the insights into both. And I would even say don't be afraid to go into corporate first, because there's so many jobs like that where they need people to help them understand country dynamics. And from starting there, you could probably just pivot. So don't also limit yourself into thinking about it as just like this particular role because I want to be in this particular space in international relations or something. Don't be afraid to go to other places and sell it as an asset that you are a Zambian that's been living here for a very long time, has this, you know, knowledge and also has the understanding of her own country. Because as Stefan has said, as we've all said, this is going to be the new frontier of the new world economic power. So I wouldn't see it just as a, I can't work in South Africa because pivot around. To Ms. Lamini, I think similar to what Ste said is volunteer also, and not just to say, you know, hey Ste or hey Mbali, can you please help me? Do you come with a plan of what you already want to do, or are you coming with a plan of asking me like what you should do? Because it's going to be very hard sometimes as very busy people to like sit and then conceptualize like what would you be good at? I mean, come and say what is you want to do, and then we can say here's who you must talk to, here's what you must do. Make it easy for me. I've got a 6 and a 3-year-old. Between my work and this, it's very tough to answer every single person. But if you say, this is what I'd like to do, then it makes it easier because they have a clear idea, rather than what a lot of people do is they come, you know, could you please help me like understand, like, how could I get into this? You're requiring more thinking than I might have capacity for at the time. Sato over there also sent me a very nice LinkedIn message. I gave him my WhatsApp number. He asked for a meeting. I said, please speak to my chief of staff who's sitting over there and arrange the meeting between the two of you for me to be there. Because I don't have time to also always answer every single person's thing, but I will give you the people who will, you know, bash my head in to get back to it. So I think it's also very important to just understand that when you're wanting to approach people, say to them, what's the easiest way that I can get someone in your organization even to just put me in your calendar, rather than saying you're going to call me when I'm in a panel or meeting, because then by the time I see it, I'll have 300 other WhatsApps and you'll be very far down the list. And if I can't get to it, you're going to feel like I'm blue ticking you, but I'm not. It's just, I'm trying to prioritize. And then the last question, I think, was Lulama, will politicians shape our lives? Let me answer it this way. How many of you know your SRC president? How many of you are registered to vote? How many of you know the councillor right here or where you live? How many of you have ever attended a CPF? Exactly. So will politicians shape our lives? Absolutely. Because if you're not going to get involved in understanding politics, even at the very personal space of who your SRC president is, then you absolutely must understand that the people that are audacious enough, sometimes incredibly dumb, but want to be in power are the ones that are going to be in charge of you. So politicians will definitely rule you if you're the kind of person who's not going to take the time to understand how the system works, even for something as simple as what is a CPF. And I'm not saying this to shame you, I'm saying, and this is across the board, every race, demographic, age in this country. I speak to CEOs that don't understand some of the things that are happening in this country. They just understand very narrowly what they have to do. And this is why we're in the situation that we're in. We outsourced our powers to city politicians, and now your generation is going to pay for it. But we still can't reverse it, but it's going to require that we also go just beyond being at varsity, beyond networking, beyond these events, and actually also understanding politics and then affecting it where you can. We have the most participatory democracy in the world. There's nothing that stops you from organizing. I mean, Dr. Dlamini was saying you could be president. I've often spoken to university students and said, in a particular ward, especially in an institution this big as WITS, why have not any of you actually decided to run to be the councillor the next election and get every single person in your humanities class or your legal class to vote for you guys? It only takes sometimes on average 3,000 people. So you can't tell me that if you guys have something really great, even if you just run it as the ward councillor for the university, that you couldn't do it. It's not that hard in South Africa, as you can see by some of the people that are apparent leaders.
Hectic. All right, I will double down on volunteering. And this is for Lillian and for Tina. I think I'm not saying you should be, selling your skills for 0 rands. I'm just saying at the point where you are now, where you are still students, how are you using your time during school holidays? How are you using your free time? You really shouldn't have free time. You still have a lot of work to do in this world. In December, you finish writing your exams by mid-November. What is filling your agenda between mid-November and mid-February? That's a very, very long time to be Netflix and chilling. And when you go to people and you offer to just volunteer, and of course you would need money for transport, and if your parents can assist with that, that would be great. I'm not saying you should be breaking your back, but I'm saying, are you even applying yourself? Have you thought about it? Have you at least tried? And Lillian, this is something that could work for you while you're still finishing your degree. You could volunteer at some of these embassies, build that brand, build that rapport, so that when you're ready to graduate, it's a much easier conversation, but it also applies for everyone. And Tina, I know your name is long, but I remember it starting with the TINA. You asked a question around networking. I'm a huge believer in networking. And I know the next sentence is gonna make you roll your eyes, but LinkedIn is a thing, hey? It really, really is. If you go on my LinkedIn right now, you would think like I'm the biggest superstar ever, because it is so curated for a reason. I put forward all my work, the things that interest me. It tells a story, and it's never too early for you to start your LinkedIn profile, right? You're a student right now. You're on this platform, you're in this room with all these people. You could be taking a picture with Crispin, you could be posting that on your LinkedIn and saying, you know what, I had such a great engagement tonight at the SAIIA event, such thoughtful insights on humanities, really. Write, share your story, build a profile of things that interest you, where your skill sets are aligned, etc. But start building that and start DMing the likes of Helen, the likes of Mbali. And whenever somebody directly messages me, the first thing I do is I click on their profile to see who are you and where do our worlds meet. And more often than not, there are linkages, and I'm very able to say, okay, maybe go talk to Crispin, or go talk to this person, or talk to that person. But lastly, as you look at your networking and when you meet people, be very clear on what you want and how you think that person can help you with it. Don't make me think with you. Because as Mbali has said, there's no time, right? Unless if you can get me to sit down and have coffee, and good luck with that. And then we can think about it and work through it, et cetera, et cetera. But on a first-time meeting basis, you should be able to think for yourself, how does your career link to what Helen is doing at Microsoft? Where do you see the opportunity, and what do you want Helen to do about that? Then that makes my job very easy in terms of connecting the dots with you and getting that over the line. Last thing, guys, please watch the news. I know they're depressing, but you need to know what is happening around the world. You need to know what's happening in your country. You need to know what is happening globally. So at least in a week, watch local news 3 times and maybe global news 2 times. Some consume from social media, but I really believe in just sitting and watching the news. It makes you conversational. A young person approached me the other day, a day after Microsoft had just, announced that, they've passed the 4 trillion mark. And this person came to me with this news very excitedly, and that was a great conversation starter, because this is breaking news and this person has taken the interest to know this thing and wants to talk about this thing and what does that mean for AI, et cetera, et cetera. So please watch the news, be interested in the world, and I wish you all of the very best. Thank you.
Hey, I think, let me start where Helen ends off. I think if you send someone, or me, if you send me a message that says hi, I will blue tick you. But if you send a message that says, hi, I've applied for 1, 2, 3, 4, would you look at my CV? I might be more inclined to say, I want to really help this type of person. So approaching someone, we met at the WITS gathering, I would like you to help me. That's something that, approach someone with a problem, actually, that you think they can help you with. And if they can't, they'll refer you to somebody else. And that's how networking works. That's how you follow up on networking. Lulama, I really like the program that you're busy with. I like music just generally, and I think it's something that is an understated commodity. For example, the Amapiano industry is a soft power tool in diplomacy. There are French girls who don't understand for the life of them what half of our Amapianos songs mean, but they're singing them so beautifully. So I think music is really a soft power tool, and I think it's something we underutilize and broadly in our diplomacy as an arsenal. But also it's a very profitable industry done correctly. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. Mbali has really answered the question. I mean, I would be a bit more crude. Politicians do run your life. And they run it because you let them. Notando spoke about entrepreneurship, and I think also Stephen spoke to this well, but I was going to say, I think entrepreneurship is both not as complicated as we make it out to be, but it is also hard work. I really admire entrepreneurs. I really respect them, because the level of sacrifice that is required to be an entrepreneur is next to none. But it's also the ultimate problem-solving profession, if you want to look at it as a profession, because you selling something to society, or you're providing a product, or you're literally solving a problem, and you're convincing people that, firstly, this is a problem, and they might not know that it is, and you can solve it for them. That's a very, very complicated skill set, but it's not that complex. Just do it. And in doing it, you learn more and more and more. And you win some, you run a profitable economics, a consultancy firm, or you might go bust. But that's the perks of the journey. And it's complicated in that not everyone will be this mega rich or mega successful entrepreneur. Not every product is the best, but it's in the journey that you do learn how to solve society's problems. And then lastly, the visa question, I think, is also Ste answered that quite well. I did whisper to Lillian here that some problems can be solved by marriage, but but maybe we don't always encourage that. But I think in the greater scheme of things, we really do have a regressive conversation around migration in this country. And I'm the son of a Malawian born in South Africa, but my father was Malawian here as an accountant at some many years ago, and married a South African. So you see the marriage thing. But at the end of the day, the very complex thing about Africa is that our borders are so artificial. As I'm reading a book currently called Africa's Not a Country. And there's a fascinating narration of how Idi Amin becomes president of Uganda. He goes to fetch his cousins in South Sudan. And he says, let's go have a coup in Uganda. And you look at this and you're like, why are we so committed to these borders when they're so artificial? And you literally have Eswatini, you have people who walk across the road to go to school and come back to South Africa to put their heads in a bed. Or you have cousins across the road. So our borders, I think there's a broader conversation that we should be having around Pan-Africanism, and it's regressing across the world over, primarily also because of the conflicts that we are seeing, driven by very narrow interests. So I think that's a conversation that we can have more broadly, but I think SAIIA also really framed it well to say, you need to look at it as a long-term idea, and I think strategic, what do you call it? Strategic foresight sounds like very complex. Yeah, I don't think it's something straight out of varsity that you can walk into SAIIA's office and say, you don't have strategic foresight. She'll tell you very nicely to take a hike, but you'll earn the skill. And I think you can never fully understand what the world holds because the world's also so unpredictable. If you said to me, during COVID, there'll come a time where, maybe not during COVID, before COVID, there'll come a time where we would look at the USA and ask ourselves, what's happening there in terms of democracy, in terms of how it's organized itself as a state? I would have thought impossible. So the world is also incredibly unpredictable. And I think professions like strategic foresight, much coveted, but also would always be treated with some level of skepticalness. So it's a skill that you'll have to harness with great dexterity. Thank you.
A very big thank you to our panelists once again for taking the evening to be with us and share some insights on multilateralism. In regards to the question on strategic foresight, the chief just whispered to me that SAIIA does have a strategic foresight office in Cape Town. One of the scholars who's here, Malibongwe, I'm not sure where he is within the room. There he is. That's the man to talk to. And he'll tell you who's the other man to talk to. And we'll see how things go. Thank you so much.
Can I please get your attention once more? I think that panel deserves another round of applause. Thank you very much to our panelists and our co-moderators who have delivered a very rich discussion. And I think a lot of us took a lot from that conversation. I would have loved for us to go on and on, but unfortunately, we do not have the luxury of time. That being said, I would like to swiftly move on to the next item in our program, which is a presentation from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. And Mr. Albert Geldenhuys will take us through that. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. And listen, I have to say, Elizabeth, tonight was incredible. This is really incredible, Mr. Dlamini, Dr. Dix. The panel, listen, I fully agree with you. I've been also through many of these discussions, and I was thoroughly impressed. I know that you've been tonight in an incredible time, and I hope you took notes, because what has been said here tonight is really something that will put you in a trajectory that you've never seen before. Now, just to make sure, because some of you might walk away and you forget, quickly turn to your neighbor and please tell them one thing that you're going to take out of tonight. Just one thing. If it's the Maguinas, so be it. But just one thing. One thing that you take from tonight. All right. And now the next thing you need to do, you need to write down that thing that you've taken, because you're going to definitely forget. All right. Listen, I am short, very, very short time here, and I'm not going to go too much because I've really felt like our presentations here tonight was absolutely incredible. Really, I don't think you guys even understand what you've been exposed to. So the Department of International Relations Cooperation, and my colleague here is obviously involved in advancing our interests of South Africa abroad, you know. But tonight, I just want to focus on two things. And I really want to make this short because I felt like what happened here was really something else. And that is that I just want to present to you again, your career is a course of action that you choose. Now you choose it, and all of you chose here to be here tonight. But I'm very impressed again with the type of questions, the engagement, and the time that you're living in. Now, tonight, I think I want to be very simple because I'm still, and really my mouth was like a gobsmack to hear the type of things we heard, and starting from all of you, really, I was very, very impressed. Think of three things, humanities, three things: heart, head, and hands. Or start from here, head, heart, and hands. Because tonight you could see that you might walk away with a humanities degree, but what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? Can I tell you something? We're busy now with our 4th internship program at the department, and one of them is our flagship program, the cadet program. That's where we, bring in people like yourself that studies international relations, political science, economics, law, development studies, and so forth. If you receive, last year, we received 50,000 applications. How do you choose? How do you choose? Do I look at the picture and say, "Yo, this is a handsome young man. This Mr. Lamine. Oh, by the way, do I look at the picture? Do I look at the ID? Do I look at the ethic? Nothing. None of those things. Dear students, one of the first things we look at is we look at their marks, okay? Because your state and your advancement here starts with your work right here, okay? So make sure that you work very hard to get the best marks possible. Why are we speaking about these things of your head, heart, and hands? Is because even in the field of international relations, we want to make sure that you've got strong analytical skills, very good interpretation skills, and then communication skills. As you spoke about earlier, and I think it's brilliant, These people that you've seen on top here, they didn't get here by chance or by knowing people. They worked to be here, and they're still working to be here. And what they speak about pivoting is extremely important. It reminds me of a company called Nokia. Do you all know Nokia? All right, Nokia, do you know how Nokia started? Nokia started as a mill, as a paper mill company in the 1860s, okay? Making paper, all right? Then they pivot into a rubber company, all right? And then they pivot again into telecommunications in the 1960s. And then they were the first ones to actually develop GSM, a telephone, and actually they took the world by storm, okay? We all still remember 3310 and all these other, I had my first Nokia phone, it literally looked like a brick, okay? When you pick it up, you're like, hello, hello, you do that type of thing, okay? Massive. But what happened is that when this whole world of telecommunications pivot into a world of this is how we live, now all of us have a cell phone, is that somewhere along the line, they stopped pivoting. And they've stopped pivoting related to the operating system, okay? And then even BlackBerry stopped pivoting in that way. Now, what do we mean by pivot? Change. Dear students, this is you. Don't stop pivot, okay? Stop. By stopping, you just think, okay, I can't do it. No, you have the skills, and you are born in the right time, okay? Yes, you're in a very difficult time, but you are born in the right time, all right? Because you have an opportunity now with humanities, with your head, heart, and hands, to bring these things together, okay? To bring even something we call humanics, which humanity and IT has been brought together. It's not psychomanics, not nothing like that. But it's your opportunity to step in and say, listen, this is who I am, this is what I have. How can I make a change in this world? And you guys sitting here tonight has really been privileged and very fortunate to hear these things. But you need to take this now. So listen, okay, great. The Department of International Relations, they want you to be very analytical. How do I become analytical? Well, look at the world situation. Read. Look at those things and interpret. How would you respond if you've got your strategic foresight? If you were the DG or the CEO, how would you respond to those things? And start practicing those things of interpreting it, and therefore also eventually communicating it. So, I just want to stop. I don't want to say more than that because I felt like, for the sake of time and for the sake of incredible presentations tonight, really take these things, take what you've taken tonight, and make work of it. The people that came forward to us that did well in the internships is really those that make a difference. Exactly what our speakers were saying, that are the problem solvers. It's not those that were sitting while they got an internship and sat still and did nothing. It's those that said, listen, can I help here? Can I help there? Be those problem solvers even right now at varsity. Be those forward thinkers even right now. And I hope one day that you will be part of our future leaders of South Africa, which I believe you all are. But listen, I'm going to stop there. SAIIA, thank you so much. This was an incredible evening, and we look forward to the next engagements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Geldenhuys, for such a concise presentation. I will now also swiftly move to our next item on the program, which is some reflections by our current KAS-SAIIA scholars. I will at this moment call Mr. Malibonge Msimango, Ms. Rendani Chitangano, and Mr. Yasin Tayob to the front. Thank you. Can you please give them a round of applause as they come?
I'm wondering, where's Rendani? Should we wait for her or can I continue? Okay, so, okay, can I stand here? Okay. So thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Malibonge Msimango. I'm a KAS-SAIIA scholar working under the Futures program at SAIIA. So within the Futures program, we focus more on strategic foresight, anticipatory governance, and systems thinking. So the biggest takeaway that I can say I got from being part of that particular environment, two things have improved. My problem-solving skills, which is the fact that looking into the future, you need to look for future opportunities. So when I look at a problem, now I look at in terms of when there's a problem, I look for an opportunity. As humanities students, we are being taught to analyze problems, what are the causes, what are the implications, but ultimately it boils down to, are you able to find solutions to those particular problems? So for me now, South Africa has a lot of problems. We have high unemployment rates, we have inflation, we have crime. For us humanities students, we need to look at these problems as opportunities for us to be able to sort of like, whether it be to monetize, whether to improve ourselves, but we need to see these problems as opportunities. And also another thing which was also mentioned here is the fact that when you network, you need to bring value, in the sense that it's all good and well to speak to someone to say that this is the work I do, but ultimately you need to be able to identify to say that what value do I bring to this person if I engage with that particular person, in the sense that so that when they go at night, when they go to sleep, before they sleep, they'll remember to say, I have this urgent problem that needs to be addressed. So I was approached by someone who will be able to address this particular problem for me. So I think for me, those are the things that stood out for me. We always have events at SAIIA. We negotiate, we sort of like network with different experts within the field. But my biggest takeaway is the fact that what value do I bring to the table, and also what, how can I address problems that I'm sort of like confronted with. So those are the two things that I feel like I got from the scholarship. It's not technical stuff that are mentioned within the adverts, but it's things that I personally felt I feel like they've sort of like prepared me for the world that I have ahead of me. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Yasin Tayob. Can I stand here? Is it fine? Okay, cool. I'm Yasin Tayob. I'm one of the KAS-SAIIA scholars for this year, and I'm working in the Cape Town office. I'm working under the Climate and Natural Resources Program. So on my side, I must be honest, the SAIIA scholarship made me really uncomfortable sometimes. I don't do very well with change, and I came out of my honors degree to my master's degree, and I came into a situation where I had no idea what to do. my mentor asked me, should write policy insight. I said, yeah, I'm the intern. I said, yeah, I'll write the policy insight. I had no idea what a policy insight was, but I write the policy insight. And so it put me in these situations, these positions where I felt quite uncomfortable because I was never exposed to these situations before. But that was the real beauty of the internship. That was the real beauty of the scholarship. It forced me to change. It forced me to upskill myself. And it forced me to kind of just get better at what I know I'm good at. And in that regard, I'd just like to say thank you so much to SAIIA. Thank you so much to SAIIA. Thank you so much to KAS for this opportunity. It's been an opportunity that has been invaluable to me. And I encourage everyone to apply. It's very competitive, but I really encourage everyone to apply. It's been at this stage in my life, it's been quite life-changing. So thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to KAS and SAIIA. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Yasin. As a former KAS-SAIIA scholar myself, I can truly attest to the value of the scholarship. I'm now at SAIIA because of the scholarship, and I continue to learn skills and every day. I just want to highlight for those who are interested in applying for the scholarship, the application window has been officially launched. So you can register to apply. The application deadline is on the 26th of September, 2025. And should you have any questions related to the scholarship, please make your way to the KAS table outside, and they will answer those questions for you. And one of our panelists had asked the question whether we are registered to vote or any of and you want to register to vote, you also have it out. Any further ado, I will invite our other KAS-SAIIA scholar for this year, Tasneem, to give us our vote of thanks.
Hello. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for making this a truly wonderful and enriching experience. Firstly, I want to thank all of the students who made the time to attend this event. As a student myself, I understand the pressure you face, the assignments, tests, and all that comes along with student life. And so, along with everyone who made this event possible, we are deeply grateful for your participation. To our panelists, Dr. Sitembele Mbeti, Ms. Mbali Ntuli, Ms. Helen Magashoa, Mr. Crispin Peary, and Mr. Stefan Malhaber, thank you for sparing your precious time and sharing your expertise. You have shown that not only is it possible to thrive in the humanities field, but it is also possible to shape it. We are truly grateful for your enthusiasm and insights. I would also like to extend our deepest gratitude to the Konrad Adenauer Foundation for their continued support to the event, the KAS-SAIIA program, and in their own words, their dedication to freedom, justice, and solidarity. Thank you. A special thank you to Dr. Dix, Ms. Mayor, and Tawanda. Hi, Tawanda. For their guidance and support over the past few months. Thank you to our esteemed and wonderful CEO, Elizabeth. Thank you. Dr. Dix for his insightful address, and Mr. Dlamini for delivering the keynote. Your passion and commitment to supporting this event and the scholars go well beyond your time here this evening. We also appreciate the Department of International Relations and Cooperation for the informative presentation and willingness to engage with students. And to the SAIIA staff who made this event possible, this events team, communications team, the Office of the CEO, and all the support staff, thank you. A special shout out to Melissa, Ketiwe, Sarasa, Steve, Nossi, Nondimuso, Nancy, and Maureen. Melissa and Isabel, especially thank you for always being people I could turn to, even during the most intense moments. To our exhibitors, thank you for representing your organization and offering meaningful advice and support to our attendees. Thank you to Theb, our caterer, Alex for transportation, and George for live streaming the event. Lastly, thank you to my 2025 KAS-SAIIA scholars and friends, Tivashni, Molly Bongwe, Muzi, Rendani, and Yasin. The time, dedication, and commitment we have poured into this event have made it a truly memorable experience. With all of this collective effort, we have hosted a careers event to look back on fondly. On that note, it is my pleasure to officially close this event. Thank you all once again for your participation, support, and enthusiasm. Thank you.
Just a quick announcement for those who came via arranged transport. Your transport has arrived, so after grabbing your refreshments, please make your way down to catch the transport. Thank you.
They don't bother me, so I'm gonna keep on giving you the best that I've got, baby. They don't bother me, said I'm gonna keep on giving you the best that I've got. Listen, baby, somebody understands you. Somebody